Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Brass Gaming Podcast. And happy Zendikar Day!
Woo!
Zendikar just released today, and I'm your host Christian. Alongside me is
Aspen.
Yeah.
What's up?
Yeah, we're in the studio for another week, and this is the week before Zendikar comes out. And boy, do we got a deck for you today! As our friend Nick just told us before the episode, it was a mechanic that should not exist, and I kind of agree with him.
What do you mean? Landfall did nothing wrong. It didn't hurt anything. It's just the best thing in Zendikar.
It's just you'll see when we get into the deck.
Right. So, before we head any further, though, I'd like to encourage the audience to like, subscribe, and share this video or comment. It means a lot to us, and we've noticed that most of the people that actually watch our videos aren't subscribed. So if you like this content, please just subscribe. It's free. You don't have to do anything. You can unsubscribe whenever you want. So without further ado, today we are talking about Omnath, Locus of Creation, which I believe is one of the golden gem commanders from Zendikar that everyone wants to build around. And when it was first spoiled, I went to the store and I built the deck. Or at least most of the pieces, unless they were in Zendikar. So, without further ado, Omnath, Locus of Creation. He costs red, green, white, and a blue for a legendary creature elemental who is a 4/4. When Omnath, Locus of Creation enters the battlefield, draw a card. Nice and simple. And then it has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 4 life if this is the first time this ability has resolved this turn. If it's the second time, add red, green, white, blue to your mana pool. And then, if it's the third time, Omnath deals 4 damage to each opponent and each planeswalker you don't control.
Whew.
See, landfall's fine.
Yeah, that's
You have to play 3 lands in a turn.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's just almost nearly impossible for this color combination and this deck. I mean, they should just be mono black at this point. Good old Ob Nixilis from way back in the day. He was the ideal landfall. I don't know why anyone would want to play this.
It does so much in a single card, and I have never been this hyped over a legendary creature or over like making this commander in a long time.
Aren't you the same guy that gets hyped over every single legendary creature in every single set when it gets spoiled? Maybe a little bit. All right. Let's go ahead and get into it. As you guys know, as usual, we don't go over every card in the deck. We just highlight some of the more interesting and important cards. The deck list will be in the description box below. It's 2 tapped out. All of the deck lists that we've done are on that on our page on Tapped Out. So starting off here, we got one of staple card, and they made a really bad version of this in their Zendikar set. But this one, the famous card everyone hates, Avenger of Zendikar. And why does everyone hate it, you might ask? Well, Avenger of Zendikar, he's a 5 colorless, 2 green, 5/5. He says, when Avenger of Zendikar enters the battlefield, put a 0/1 green plant creature token onto the battlefield for each land you control. Well, as you can probably take a guess at the theme of this deck, I mean, we're playing a lot of lands. And we're probably playing a minimum of, what, 3 per turn? Is that typically what you do? Or
try to as best as possible.
Yeah. So, you know, you're playing a lot of lands. And he even benefits even greatly from that, because whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may put a +1/+1 counter on each plant creature you control, which is his landfall ability. Oh man, more landfall. And I feel like this whole episode's gonna be a lot of landfall. But Avengers Zendikar is a great card.
It is.
Just overall a staple for green decks most of the time. Unless you're playing some like small green deck with not a lot of lands, you're probably playing Avenger of Zendikar in it.
Yeah, definitely.
So moving on, we got one of the more interesting cards, probably one of my favorite cards with the landfall ability from this set, which is Felidar Retreat. This is 3 colorless and a white for an enchantment. It has landfall. When a land enters the battlefield under your control, choose one. You can either A, create a 2/2 white cat beast creature token, or B, put a +1/+1 creature on, or put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Those creatures gain vigilance to end of turn. So, I mean, it gives you, there was the white retreat from...
Retreat to
Emeria?
Yeah,
Emeria. So this is just a souped-up version of that, essentially, where you get 2/2 cat beasts, and...
Instead of 1/1s.
Instead of 1/1s, and you make your guys stronger, and they get vigilance.
Yep, and they get 1/1 counters, and like the last one was just 1/1 till end of turn. It was just like...
Yeah.
I just saw this card, I was like, yeah, it's going in.
Absolutely. Oh, and how could we forget this guy? So... the whole Omnath thing it's been really complicated. He started off as green, then green red, then green red blue, and now you can see he's 4-color now, and building up to him becoming a Phyrexian. Hashtag not conspiracy theories and magic. But this is Omnath, Locus of Rage. He has landfall. Oh, well, I should probably go over his mana cost first.
Yeah.
3 colorless, 2 red, 2 green. Landfall. When it enters the battlefield under your control, put a 5/5 red and green elemental creature token onto the battlefield.
Nothing bad about that.
Well, not until you get to a second part. When Omnath, Locus of Rage, or another elemental you control dies, he just bolts something, or does 3 damage to target creature or player. So, just a lightning bolt whenever an elemental dies.
I don't see how that can be broken.
Yeah, I mean, in a deck where you're playing a bunch of lands per turn, not really good. Not really good at all. And so finally, another, I remember playing this card way back in the day. Like when this came out in the original Zendikar block. And this is Rampaging Balos. For 4 colorless, 2 green, it's 6/6. It has Trample. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may put a 4/4 green beast creature token onto the battlefield. Again, this one's a lot more simpler than that one. He's not really that fancy, but he makes 4/4s and, as many things as you can crap out in this deck, I guess, are the best, So, oh man, this next section should be interesting. This is something that is probably too good for your strategy, and that's, you called this section Drawing with Lands, and...
Most of these sections have something to do with lands, if you did not guess already.
Oh man.
But yes, we are drawing with lands in this deck. So the first one I would like to cover is the third Omnath, Locus of the Royal. For a colorless green, blue, red legendary creature elemental that is a 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, it deals damage to any target equal to the number of elementals you control. So really awesome. We're playing a few elementals in here. And then it also says, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on target elemental you control. Okay, that's pretty good. And then if you control 8 or more lands, draw a card. So it doesn't start drawing cards right away, but late game when you just pull land off the top and you have a bunch of mana, you're like, sure, a land drop hurts, but hey, it's going to draw me another card. And make your dudes bigger, which is also really nice, especially if you're trying to protect yourself from being bopped.
Oh, man.
Next one is, I think, a lot of people's favorites in most decks that play blue-green is Tatyova, Benthic Druid. For 3 colorless, green and a blue, it is a legendary creature Merfolk Druid that is a 3/3. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, gain life and draw a card. Sweet, simple, gain life, draw a card. Nothing fancy, but overall, just a really good card to top deck and start playing lands.
I mean, it feels like with that, every land you play from your hand now replaces itself, and it gets you a life.
Yeah, definitely.
Just good.
It is great. And then this card, one of my favorite cards in multiple formats, is Tireless Tracker. For 2 colorless and a green, it is a creature human scout. It is a 3/2. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, investigate, which is put a colorless clue artifact token onto the battlefield with pay 2, sacrifice this artifact, draw a card. And then whenever you sacrifice a clue, put a 1/1 counter on Tireless Tracker. So it's generating you an ability to dump your mana into these clues to draw cards. But not only that, it's also beefing up your Tireless Tracker, which I just think it's amazing that it does 2 things in one.
Yeah, I mean, definitely on turn 3 is great. I played him in my in Jund Modern for a period of time, and I was a huge fan of him. I thought he was really, really solid, especially with Renin 6 turn 2, Tireless Tracker turn 3, play fetch, get a clue, crack fetch, get another clue. And it was just...
do the whole thing, and then your opponent's like, oh, so yeah, you played a bunch of lands, but now you just save up with all those other clues, which is also really nice, because if they kill Tireless Tracker, generally, you're not too upset about it, because as long as you got all your clues from it, you're really fine with it. Get some card draw out of it.
Absolutely.
And the final card, a brand new card, one of my favorite cards in the deck, actually, is Valakut Exploration. Has a lot of text. 2 colors and a red for a enchantment. Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. At the beginning of your end step, if there are cards exiled with Valakut Exploration, put them into their owner's graveyard. Then Valakut Exploration deals that much damage to each opponent. So, really awesome card, I think. You just play a bunch of lands per turn, and then just deal a bunch of damage to all your opponents if you don't want to play those cards, which is really nice. It gives you cards for the access for that turn, and then it just it deals damage to each opponent at the end of the turn, which in a Pod and Commander is really nice, especially because your commander also does a similar effect where it deals damage to all your opponents. So this is more like playing lands to get value, but also to slowly dwindle out your opponents, grind them down, and then towards the end of the game, you just push in with all your creatures.
I think my biggest downside about this set is that we didn't get another like Valakut the Molten Pinnacle, but we got a pretty good enchantment for commander, especially for this Omnath deck.
Definitely, most definitely.
And so, man, next section, we're a lands deck. We want to play as many lands as we can. And this, I mean, some of these things are really good at that. Starting with this first one, Azusa Lost But Seeking. And one video that you guys wouldn't have saw was I actually had an Azusa deck and we recorded a video of my Azusa deck that I had built. However, something had happened. The footage was fine, but it was our old format. We didn't have this nice, background, so we ended up scrapping it because we weren't really proud of it at the time. And so Azusa, simply enough, 2 colorless and a green. She's a legendary creature human monk as a 1/2. And then she just reads simply enough, you may play 2 additional lands on each of your turns. Simple. Get 2 more lands, because why not?
Right.
Why not play 3 lands per turn and get every single ability on your Omnath? No downside to that whatsoever.
No.
The next one is Burgeoning. And this is one of my favorite cards, like enchantments for playing additional lands, because it lets you do something that you shouldn't do, which is play lands on your opponent's turn. So Burgeoning is 1 green mana for an enchantment. Whenever an opponent plays a land, you may choose a land card from your hand and put it into play. Why not just you have Omnath out, you have Burgeoning out. Let's just play a land on everyone's turn and get those sweet, sweet landfall triggers on everyone else's turn.
It's great, and this can be pretty broken with some combos. Or a single combo in the deck, but like it's great to see.
Absolutely. And this one's a little bit of a newer one, kind of like Azusa, kind of not. This is Dryad of Elysian Grove. He's a 2 colors and a green. For a 2/4, you may play an additional land on each of your turns, and land you control are every basic land type in addition to their other types. So it's really good.
Yeah,
it really fixes you for Omnath, because his casting cost is kind of restrictive. I mean, you do get green, so it's usually fairly easy to sculpt out the 4 colors you need.
Right.
But he's still 4 colors nonetheless, and Dryad on turn 3 pretty much guarantees, as long as you have another land, Omnath's coming down turn 4 no matter what lands you have.
No, definitely, because there are some turns in the deck, since we are playing a 4-color deck, where you're like, you just don't have the right mana, and just that card in particular is just really nice mana fixing. Absolutely.
And finally, we have Exploration. It's a 1 green enchantment, which another simple effect. You may play an additional land each turn. So simple. Just play another land, because you really need to play more lands in this deck, and that's how it functions, I suppose.
Of course you do, but we always come to points in the game where I'm not drawing lands.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of lands out, so what do? You bounce the lands. So this next section is called Bouncing Lands. The first one we have is Living Twister. For red, green, creature elemental that is a 2/5. It has 2 abilities. The first one is pay 1 in a red, discard a land card. Living Twister deals 2 damage to any target. Nice and simple. Little bolt. Or shock.
Shock, yeah.
And then it has also pay a green. Return a tapped land you control to its owner's hand. Oh no, I don't have any lands to trigger my landfall effects. I tap a forest, pay a green, bounce it back to my hand, and play it. And if you have those effects that you play multiple lands a turn, you just do it over and over again, which is really awesome. And this other card, which does it a lot better in my opinion, is Trade Routes. For a colorless and a blue, it is an enchantment. For 1 colorless, return target land you control to its owner's hand. Then also for a colorless, discard a land card from your hand and draw a card. So say you're drawing too much lands and you just really need to find an answer. You can bounce a bunch of your lands and dig through your deck as much as possible to go ahead and find a card that can save you. So really awesome card. I first heard of this card like a year or 2 ago or something, and I was like, this card is actually really good. And I saw some math, I'm like, okay, it's very good now.
Absolutely.
It is definitely awesome.
And so we did some, I mean, you'd call this the spice kind of, wouldn't you? You call it the more lands the merrier. And of course, you're playing a lands deck. If you don't have this in there, what are you doing? We're talking about Field of the Dead, of course. Field of the Dead is a fair and balanced land and lands deck that does absolutely nothing, broken, only taps for a colorless. Moving on. No, but Field of the Dead also has this thing that reads, well, he enters tapped, so I guess that's a downside.
Yeah.
I guess.
I mean, it doesn't.
And it only taps for a colorless.
Yeah,
so that's balanced.
It's not broken.
But what Field of the Dead also does is read, whenever Field of the Dead or another land enters the battlefield under your control, if you control 7 or more lands with different names, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token.
That can't be broken.
Yeah, you can't break that. I mean, you're just playing a billion lands per turn and probably have a bunch of different lands, different names, but...
And it's not like when people board wipe, I can just make more creatures.
Yeah, I mean...
It's fair.
This is I think this is worse than Force of Will, to be honest. This might be a worse card than Force of Will.
And all actually speaking, though, this card is very broken in, I think, a lot of decks. And, like, you were seeing more EDH decks that have more than, like, 2-3 colors in it that are playing Field of the Dead, and it's just...
A lot of decks are kind of adapting to playing a lot more non-basics nowadays because the fear of stuff like Blood Moon isn't like that prevalent because, again, when I first started playing, that was such a big, like, impact on the game. And it's crazy to me since I've been playing EDH to see, like, it go from these cards like Back to Basics and Blood Moon to being these like big like bad things for the format to all of a sudden it's like, yeah, we're just gonna play a bunch of different non-basics and no one's gonna punish us for it. And maybe that's something we need to adapt to as players, but who knows. This next card's pretty spicy too, and I really like this card when it was in Standard, even though I never took the time to build around it. It's Sylvan Awakening. For 2 colorless and a green, it's a sorcery. Until your next turn, all lands you control become 2/2 elemental creatures with reach, indestructible, and haste. They're still lands. Yeah. Just, you're playing a billion lands, why not turn them all into 2/2s with indestructible and a reach and a haste, and let's just end the game.
You have no idea how many times there are where, like, I'll be, like, out of gasp, I'll have, like, 20, 25 lands out, and I'll top deck that, I'll be like, cast this, attack.
We're about to alpha strike someone, boys.
Yeah, it's great. And this last section is what I called value cards. Most of them are from the new set just because I just saw these cards. I'm like, I have to put them in there just because of how valuable they are to the deck. So the first one I'd like to cover is called Ancient Green Warden. For 4 colors, green is a creature elemental that is a 5/7. It has reach. You may play lands from your graveyard, also really good. And if a land entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability or of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So now we got Panharmonicon for lands. Yay!
Yay.
That can't be broken.
It's not only is this creature a Panharmonicon for lands, but they also put a Crucible of Worlds on it too.
And it has reach. So
and
it's a 5/7.
And it's a 5/7. Like, fair and balanced cards are fair and balanced.
Exactly. Like, there's no broken cards in here.
No.
I don't know.
Not at all.
The next one is Morog, Fury of Akum. It is a legendary creature Minotaur warrior that costs 4 colorless and red. Each creature you control gets +1/+0 for each time it has attacked this turn. So, okay, I guess. But then it has Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if it's your main phase, there's an additional combat phase after this phase. At the beginning of your combat, untap all creatures you control. So, Christian, tell me this. How many combats do I get if I play 1 land in a turn?
You get 2 combats.
How about 2?
3 combats.
How about 3?
4 combats.
I see. I like this.
Sounds like it's fun. And, you know, with that ability, they just put a small anthem on him, like a +1/+0 for attacking creatures, because...
So how big are my plants when I'm attacking Avenger?
I mean, if you have Avenger out and you probably have at least 7 lands, and now you have 7 plants, and you just played 3 lands in a turn to trigger him 3 times and Avenger 3 times, yeah, I think someone's dying.
I think someone's dying too. Another card is Risen Reef. It is a colorless green and a blue for a creature elemental. Whenever Risen Reef or another elemental enters the battlefield you control, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may put it onto the battlefield tapped. If you don't put the card onto the battlefield, put it into your hand. So when we covered Omnath Locus of Rage earlier, that made elementals. Whenever you play a land, I make it elemental. Trigger Risen Reef. Oh, there's land on top. Play a land. Oh, Omnath makes another elemental. Oh, what's this? Risen Reef goes off. And sometimes you can trigger this off. And with Burgeoning, you do it on other people's turns, which I've done once before. It was fun.
we have our friend Nick in the studio, and I wish I could see the look on his face from you talking about doing this stuff with Arisen Wraith.
It's great. It's fine. The last card, which I was surprised when I saw the price because I thought this card was being overlooked, but it is Scoot Swarm for 2 colors and a green creature insect that is a 1/1. It has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 green insect creature token. If you control 6 or more lands, though, create a token that's a copy of Scoot Swarm instead. So now, if I have 6 lands, I play a land, I make 2. Play another land, I make 4. And then 8. And then 16. 32, 64, 128. You get the point. And it grows exponentially. Yeah. And when I figured, sometimes it takes me a minute to figure things out. Yeah. But when I read it over, I was like, yeah, this card's pretty good.
And so there's one final question that we need to ask that we don't have the script, which I'm surprised we didn't put this on here. What is the power level of this deck? So, Espen, I even had to play with you playing against this deck, so I'm not even going to wager a guess. But if I were to wager a guess, I'd say probably 7. Where do you think the power level of this deck is?
High 7 well, I would say at least an 8.
At least an 8? Okay.
The only problem is with landfall, if I don't hit the ramp or you don't get the lands in fast enough, it's more like a 7 or a 6 even. Mm-hmm. But if I'm able to go tournament exploration and start playing away lands as fast as possible, then it's a very powerful 8. And there are often times where like if I ramp early enough, I just control the board and I can't lose it. And it gets crazy sometimes. And
just so everyone knows, Nick just put up a 6. He gave you a nice 6 out of 10 over there. So
it is not a 6.
So and he's the one that's been on the Pro Tour, so he's got the experience over you. Sorry, Espen. No, your deck's a solid 6.
Omnath is a solid 7. Okay.
Or an 8.
You can give me a 7.
Nope. Okay. So, guys, as you're going to see on screen now is our social medias. If you want to follow the channel, it's at Real Brass Gaming. If you want to follow me, it's at HexmasterReal. Espen, where can we follow you at?
You can follow me on Twitter at ESPN_1926.
Well, guys, again, happy Zendikar Day, and we hope you enjoy this nice release. Let us know in the comments below what you got in your set boosters, because those just came out today too.
Oh yeah, they did.
All right, guys. For the Brass Gaming Podcast, I'm Christian.
And I'm Espen.
And we'll see you later.
Bye-bye.